Snow fell softly outside the glass tower, city lights flickering like ornaments. Inside the boardroom, tension filled the air as layoffs were announced. A woman stood trembling. Grace Miller, a single mom, about to lose her job days before Christmas. Then her 6-year-old daughter tugged the CEO's sleeve and whispered, "Please don't fire mommy." The room froze. Even the CEO couldn't speak. Stay, because what happened next became the miracle no one expected. Grace Miller, 32 years old, was the kind of person who made places feel warmer just by being there. She worked as an assistant at Cole Industries, juggling spreadsheets and phone calls while raising her 6-year-old daughter Ellie alone after her husband passed away 2 years earlier in a car accident. She was the one who decorated the office Christmas tree each year, who brought homemade cookies for the security guards working overnight shifts, who volunteered for extra hours when colleagues needed time off. Her desk was covered in Ellie's drawings, crayon sunshines and stick figure families that she'd tape up proudly, even when executives walked by with raised eyebrows. But this Christmas, Cole Industries faced its worst quarter in a decade. The CEO, Nathan Cole, 38, sharp-suited, known throughout the business world for his cold precision and ruthless efficiency, made the decision that would save the company: significant budget cuts, including terminating several positions. Grace's name was on the list. The day she was called into the boardroom, December 20th, Grace didn't know that Ellie had followed her to work that morning. The school was closed for winter break, and the babysitter had canceled last minute. Grace had no choice but to bring her daughter along, settling her in the break room with coloring books and strict instructions to stay put. But Ellie, clutching a handmade Christmas card that said, "Merry Christmas, Mommy," in wobbly letters surrounded by glitter hearts, had other plans. Inside the boardroom, Grace stood before Nathan and 3 board members, her hands clasped tightly to stop them from shaking. The termination letter sat on the polished table between them. "Ms. Miller," Nathan began, his voice measured and professional. "Due to restructuring." The door opened softly. Ellie walked in, her small footsteps barely audible on the thick carpet. She wore a red dress Grace had sewn from discount fabric, her hair in pigtails tied with ribbon. "Ellie!" Grace gasped, moving toward her daughter. But Ellie walked straight past her mother, right up to Nathan Cole's chair. She tugged gently on his sleeve. Nathan looked down, startled. Their eyes met, his cold and calculating, hers wide and innocent. "Please don't fire Mommy," Ellie whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear in the silent room. "She works really hard. She never sleeps. And it's almost Christmas." The room fell completely silent. Grace's tears spilled over, mortification and desperation warring in her chest. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cole. Ellie, honey, come here." But Nathan couldn't move. He stared at the little girl, at her trembling lip and hopeful eyes, at the homemade card she was now placing on top of the termination papers. Something cracked inside him, something he'd kept frozen for years. "Everyone out," he said quietly. The board members exchanged glances. "Now." They filed out quickly. Grace stood frozen, Ellie pressed against her side. Nathan looked at the card. Glitter hearts, crayon drawings, childish handwriting that said, "Thank you for giving Mommy a chance." He picked up his pen, then slowly, deliberately tore the termination letter in half. "You're not fired, Ms. Miller," he said, voice rough. "Take the rest of the week off. Paid. Be with your daughter." Grace could barely breathe. "Mr. Cole, Merry Christmas," he said, not looking up. Grace grabbed Ellie's hand and hurried out before he could change his mind, before her tears could fall any harder. Alone in the boardroom, Nathan stared at the glitter card for a long time, remembering another Christmas, another desperate plea, another little boy watching his mother beg for work. That night, Nathan stayed late in his office. Not unusual, but this time he couldn't focus on contracts or projections. The glitter card sat on his desk, catching lamplight like tiny stars. He picked it up carefully, reading it again. "Thank you for giving Mommy a chance." Memories flooded back. Memories he'd spent decades burying. His own mother, widowed when he was 7, standing in offices not unlike this one, holding his hand while employers turned her away. Too emotional, they'd said. Not professional enough. He remembered the Christmas they'd had nothing, the way she'd smiled anyway, promising him things would get better. She'd been right. She'd found work eventually, sacrificed everything to put him through school. And he'd built an empire on that foundation. But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be desperate, to be scared, to need someone to believe in you. The next morning, Nathan did something he never did. He left his office and walked through the company floors unannounced. He found Grace in the records department, helping a colleague organize files while humming Silent Night softly. She was wearing the same blazer she wore every day, professional but worn at the elbows. And her smile was genuine as she handed someone a folder. Nathan watched from the doorway. No one noticed him. He saw the way people gravitated toward her, asked her questions, laughed at her jokes. She made the sterile corporate space feel human. An hour later, his assistant summoned Grace to his office. She arrived nervous, smoothing her skirt, expecting the worst. "Sit, please," Nathan said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Grace sat on the edge, hands folded tightly in her lap. "I want to ask you something," Nathan began, leaning back. "How do you do it? Stay kind when life's been so hard?" Grace blinked, surprised. I don't understand. Your husband passed. You're raising a daughter alone. You work overtime without complaint. Yet you still bring cookies to night security and decorate the office tree." He paused, studying her. "How?" Grace's eyes softened. "When you have a little girl waiting at home, you learn to be brave. You learn that kindness costs nothing but means everything. She's watching me, Mr. Cole. I want her to see that hard times don't have to make you hard." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The layoffs, I'm stopping them. All of them." "What?" "I'll find another way. Cut executive bonuses, renegotiate vendor contracts, but I'm not firing people 3 days before Christmas." He stood, walking to the window. "My company needs restructuring, but it also needs heart, and you've reminded me of that." Grace's tears fell silently. "There's a company charity gala this Saturday," Nathan continued, turning back to her, "for children's hospitals. I'd like you and Ellie to attend, as my guests." "Mr. Cole, I couldn't possibly—" "Nathan," he corrected softly, "and yes, you can. Consider it a thank you for the reminder." Grace left his office in a daze, hardly believing what had just happened. That Saturday, she borrowed a dress from a friend and brought Ellie to the gala. The venue was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a Christmas tree that reached the ceiling. Ellie's eyes went wide. "Mommy, it's like a fairy tale." Nathan found them by the entrance, smiling. A real smile that softened the sharp edges of his face. "You came." "We did," Grace said, suddenly self-conscious in her borrowed dress. "You look beautiful," he said simply, then offered his hand to Ellie. "And you, Miss Ellie, look like a princess." Ellie giggled, taking his hand. "You're nice. Mommy said you were scary, but you're not." "Ellie!" Grace gasped. Nathan laughed, actually laughed, and the sound surprised even him. "Your mom's not wrong. I can be scary. But tonight, let's just be friends." The evening unfolded like a dream. Ellie danced with Nathan, standing on his polished shoes while he waltzed her around slowly. Grace watched, heart full, seeing her daughter smile in a way she hadn't since her father died. For the first time in years, Grace felt something other than exhaustion and worry. She felt hope. Keep watching, because that night, one act of kindness will change their lives forever. The gala was winding down when Ellie wandered toward the dessert table. Grace was chatting with another guest when she noticed her daughter had disappeared. Ellie found herself near a group of board members, the same ones from the termination meeting, standing by the bar. "Did you see Cole dancing with the assistant's kid?" one sneered, voice dripping with disdain. "Embarrassing," another agreed. "Taking pity on some sob story. It's unprofessional." "He's getting soft. First he cancels the layoffs. Now he's playing Santa Claus to employees. The investors are going to crucify him." Ellie's small face crumpled. She understood enough. They were being mean about her mommy. She ran back through the crowd, tears streaming, and crashed into Grace's legs. "Baby, what's wrong?" Grace knelt down immediately. "They said mean things," Ellie sobbed. "About you and Mr. Nathan. They said we're a sob story." Grace's face went pale. She looked up and caught the board members staring, unapologetic. Humiliation burned through her chest. This had been a mistake. She didn't belong here, in this world of crystal and champagne, where kindness was seen as weakness and need was mocked. She stood, gathering Ellie. "Come on, sweetheart. We're going home." "Grace, wait." Nathan appeared, sensing something wrong. "Thank you for a lovely evening, Mr. Cole," Grace said formally, avoiding his eyes. "But we should go." "Anna, what happened?" Before Grace could answer, one of the board members approached, Richard Chen, Nathan's longest-serving advisor. "Nathan, might I have a word?" "Not now. It's important about tonight's optics." Nathan's jaw tightened. He looked at Grace, at Ellie's tear-stained face, and fury flashed across his features. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Nathan called out, voice cutting through the music. The room fell silent. Grace froze. "I've been informed," Nathan continued, voice cold and clear, "that there are concerns about my decision to invite Grace Miller and her daughter tonight, that it's unprofessional, that I'm mixing emotion with business." Richard paled. "Nathan, let me be crystal clear," Nathan interrupted, stepping beside Grace. "Grace Miller is the reason this company still feels human. She works harder than most executives I know, while raising a child alone and still finding ways to make people smile. If you find that embarrassing or unprofessional, you're welcome to tender your resignation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This company was built on my mother's sacrifices after my father died," Nathan said, voice rough with emotion. "She was dismissed, belittled, and rejected by people just like you, people who couldn't see past their spreadsheets to recognize a human being in need. I won't let that happen here. Not on my watch." He turned to Grace, voice softening. "I'm sorry you heard that. You and Ellie belong here as much as anyone." Grace's tears fell freely, but Nathan wasn't finished. "Effective immediately, Richard. You're suspended pending review. Anyone else with concerns about compassion in the workplace can join him." The room erupted in whispers. Nathan took Grace's hand gently. "Let me take you home." But the damage was done. By Monday morning, headlines screamed across business sites. CEO falls for employee's sob story. Coal industries in turmoil over Christmas romance. Investors question Nathan Cole's judgment. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors threatened to pull funding. The stock dipped 3 points. Grace read the articles in horror, guilt crushing her chest. She'd ruined him. His reputation, his company, everything he'd built, destroyed because he'd shown her kindness. That afternoon, she typed a resignation letter with shaking hands. "Mr. Cole, I cannot be the reason your company suffers. Thank you for everything, but I must resign, effective immediately. Please don't let your kindness become your downfall. Grace Miller." She left it on his desk after hours and walked out of Coal Industries for what she thought was the last time. When Nathan found the letter the next morning, something inside him broke. He'd faced hostile takeovers, market crashes, and boardroom coups. But losing Grace, losing the one person who'd reminded him why any of this mattered, felt heavier than any corporate loss he'd ever faced. He didn't call his lawyer or his PR team. He grabbed his coat and drove straight to the address in her employee file. A modest apartment building on the south side. Christmas lights blinking in windows, snow piling on fire escapes. Nathan stood outside her door, snow gathering on his expensive coat, and knocked. Grace opened the door, startled. "Mr. Cole, what are you—" "Nathan," he corrected breathlessly. "And I need you to stop trying to protect me. You don't understand. The news, the investors, I'm ruining everything for you." "You're not ruining anything." He stepped closer. "Grace, I spent 15 years building a company that everyone respects and no one actually cares about. Do you know what that feels like? To be successful and completely empty?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Then Ellie walked into that boardroom," Nathan continued, voice breaking, "and reminded me what actually matters. You reminded me. I don't want to go back to the way things were, cold, efficient, heartless. But your reputation will survive, or it won't. Either way, I'd rather be the CEO who chose kindness than the one who chose profit over people." He pulled out an envelope. "I didn't come to ask you back. I came to offer you something else." Grace opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a formal letter offering her a new position, Director of Community Outreach, Coal Industries Foundation. A role focused on helping single parents find stable employment and support. "You're creating a new division?" she whispered. Yes, and I want you to lead it. Not because I pity you, Grace, because you're the most qualified person I know. You've lived it. You understand what people need. Mommy, Ellie appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Mr. Nathan, did you come to say sorry? Nathan knelt down to her level. I came to say thank you and to ask if you and your mom would help me with something important. What? Ellie asked, curious. Making my company nice again. Like you said, Christmas nice. Ellie grinned. Okay. Nathan looked up at Grace, hope and vulnerability written across his face. What do you say? Grace wiped her tears, then smiled. A real, genuine smile. I say, when do I start? They spent that evening in Grace's tiny apartment, Nathan helping them decorate a small Christmas tree he'd impulsively bought from a lot on the way over. A far cry from the crystal-draped tower at the gala, but infinitely more meaningful. Ellie directed the operation with 6-year-old authority, while Nathan struggled with tangled lights and Grace laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Higher! No, that side, Ellie instructed. Nathan adjusted the star on top, wobbling on a kitchen chair. Like this? Perfect, Ellie clapped. Snow continued falling outside, blanketing the city in quiet white. Inside the small apartment, something new was being built. Not a romance, not yet, but the foundation of trust, respect, and genuine connection. Grace brought hot chocolate. They sat on the worn couch, Ellie between them, watching the lights blink softly. Thank you, Grace said quietly, for seeing us. Really seeing us. Nathan looked at her, then at Ellie already dozing against his shoulder, then at the modest apartment that somehow felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. Thank you, he said simply, for reminding me what it means to be human. Months passed. The Coal Industries Foundation launched in February with Grace at the helm. The program partnered single parents with employment opportunities, childcare support, and financial counseling. Practical help, not charity. By the next Christmas, they'd helped over 200 families. The board grumbled, investors questioned, but Nathan stood firm, and gradually public opinion shifted. Articles praised coal industries for corporate compassion, and employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after that fateful boardroom meeting, Nathan hosted a small celebration at the foundation's new office. Ellie, now 7, ran up to him with another handmade card, her tradition. Nathan opened it carefully. Inside, surrounded by glitter and stickers, "Thank you for giving us a family." He looked up at Grace, who smiled softly from across the room, and something in his chest settled into place. Something he'd been missing his entire adult life. Not just success, purpose, not just wealth, connection, not just a company, a home. Ellie hugged him tightly. "You're the best boss friend ever." Nathan laughed, hugging her back. "And you're the best reminder I've ever had." Outside, snow fell gently over the city. Inside, surrounded by families they'd helped, Grace and Nathan stood together. Two people who'd found each other through an unexpected miracle, who'd chosen kindness when the world demanded efficiency, who'd built something far more valuable than any empire. A family, a purpose, a home. If this touching story warmed your heart, subscribe to our Heart Stories for more emotional tales of love, hope, and miracles.